Perfect. Okay. Stop doing that. All right. So yeah, hi everyone. My name is Alex, and before we start, actually, fun fact: my talk is about bugs, and like half an hour ago, I opened my slides, which are on Google Slides, and I noticed that they are for some reason messed up. So I had to, I guess I caught a bug and had to quickly fix them. So hopefully they all are in correct order. But yeah, I work in a company called Zencoder. We are developing an AI coding assistant. So of course, we also use AI internally, and I will share some of our experiences on how we use AI for QA specifically. But I'm in the company, been head of ML and DevOps, and also DevRel. So with that, few fun facts about me. So yeah, I've been in IT for more than 10 years now, mostly in AI. Been building Zencoder since the day zero, so I'm one of the founding members. For the last year, I'm mostly DevRel, so this is my event number 55, which of course is in a span of a year and a half, quite a lot. And I have 4 main coons back home in Portugal, which I do have occasionally have a chance to see one between the events. Now, as I mentioned, I did do quite a lot of events, and this also allowed me to sort of see firsthand how people's perception of AI in coding evolved, and how AI, of course, evolved in coding as well. Now, a little exercise which I did before the talk. So in this, rather already last month in February, we did get a lot of releases, a lot of new releases for the models, right? So we had Gemini, we had new Opus, or new Sonnet, new GPT, we had a lot of open source models, like Chinese models. Now, who here remembers what were the versions of those models 1 year ago? Who remembers which Sonnet we had 1 year ago? Anyone? I heard something 3.5, okay. Well, it was 3.7, right? So 3.7 was released in February 2025. And roughly a year ago, and since then, we had 3.7, 4, 4.1, 4.5, now 4.6. So we went through 5 generations of the models, and this happened only in the span of 1 year. And sorry for the small font, I had to put a lot of models there. Now, this of course has been quite a journey for everyone, especially if you are using AI, and hopefully you are. But also, this sort of accelerated all the talks about AI replacing everyone, and we just had a few talks alluding to in that direction, in a sense, right? And probably you've heard just a few weeks ago, Dario Amodei, a CEO of Anthropic, said that AI will soon replace all the software engineers, right, in 6 to 12 months. But well, the same was said exactly a year ago, actually, like in January 26, 1 year ago, by Mark Zuckerberg. Although in this case it was predicted to be by 2030, and pretty much just like with AI development, those headlines are starting to increase in popularity, starting to pop up more and more. But also, if you used AI 1 year ago with Sonnet 3.7, let's say, and if you're using it now with Sonnet 4.6 or maybe Opus 4.6 or whatever, you probably noticed quite a significant difference, right, between what it was able to do 1 year ago versus what it is able to do now. And these and all those headlines as well are, in the most part, well, of course the models are getting better, right? But also this is in most, and hopefully this is not one of the bugs from the, okay, yeah. So in most, this is due to AI agents, right? So, and for those of you who for some reason not familiar with that, AI agent is essentially a combination of model, memory, tools, and planning. And yeah, this was generated by ChatGPT, so it went a bit overboard, I guess, with all the visuals, but I do like it. And yeah, so tools essentially allow the agent to interact with the environment, with the real life world. So if before you had the models which would just give you the answer based on what they learned from the data, now they can do much more. So they can connect to your databases, like in the previous speaker mentioned the case where Replit replace agent decided to wipe out the database, so they can do that, unfortunately or fortunately. But beyond that, they also can do much more. They not just wiping the databases. They also can do planning, right? So they don't just blindly output a text. They can plan what to do next, and so on. And AI agents were the hot topic of last year nowadays, and it seems like, yeah, I know why I do have these empty slides in between. Sorry, again, talk about bugs can't be without bugs, I guess. But yeah, this year is all about multi-agent collaboration. So on top of a single agent, you also get a lot of agents working together. And I'm not sure what ChatGPT imagines them doing here, over here, in the middle of the screen. But that's its perception of multi-agent collaboration, I guess. Now, as I mentioned, tools allow the agents, or multiple agents, to collaborate with the environment. And this, in turn, allows them to connect to different databases, right? So last year, MCP was also a hot topic. And just in case you're not familiar with MCP, it's essentially a protocol that allows LLMs to gather more context from different resources. Like it can be a file system, or it can be a bunch of tools that we, as developers, as software engineers, use in everyday life, right? So it can be Postgres to maybe read from the database, not wipe it. It can be Sentry to read the logs, and for some reason the text on the screen looks a bit dimmer than on those screens, so hopefully you can read there. It can also be Slack, or whatever tool you use, right? So that allows LLM to chat with you through Slack, for example. So essentially, last year, people were able to connect LLMs to, let's say, Sentry, and as QA engineer, maybe you could ask LLM to get the logs for an error, try to analyze it, and so on. And essentially, a lot of people have been doing this. Of course, us as sort of the company that is developing, that is at the forefront of AI, we do use the same tools internally. And I want to show you a few examples of how how our QA team actually uses AI, in our everyday life. Now, before that, one of the main sources of bug reports in our company, so that's from number of messages in Slack I post, so it's quite a lot. And roughly half a year ago, right, so I reported one of the bugs here. So initially, our product was a plugin for VS Code and JetBrains, so I reported that we have this, and again, it's a bit hard to read on this screen, sorry. So there is this code div, which we show, and it was sort of shortened, right? So it's kind of hidden by the spoiler tag, but you could unfurl it, right? And this section over here in the bottom wasn't clickable. But what is more, you see those buttons in the top right corner. They also overlapped with different menus, right? So again, sorry, you probably can't see it on the large screen, but over here you should be able to see them overlapping with the menu, right? So there were like one feature request and one bug, right? And I reported this about half a year ago, and then our designer decided to take this bug, not even QA engineer, but our designer, and this is the current version. So first of all, we of course can now unfurl by click, but also they fixed the bug with these buttons overlapping. So first of all, they're not overlap anymore, of course, but they also did something much nicer. Those buttons also now follow the screen as I scroll through the div, right? So essentially, again, this was done by our designer, and he does know some coding, of course, like some TypeScript, but he didn't. He also did this across not just VS Code plugin, but also in JetBrains, where it is written in Kotlin. So essentially, through AI, he was able to just prompt it, fix a bug or whatnot, and this pretty much quite quickly got into production. But this was last year, right? So last year, it was rather easy to do that. You could also maybe ask AI agent to create end-to-end tests for you, right? So let's see. So you can ask it to create end-to-end tests. It would, go through the code, create some tests for you, all good. So, nothing too fancy, and everyone has been doing this last year. Now, this year, we are moving more towards multi-agent collaboration and more towards cloud. So, yeah, so in 2026 edition, Again, I just recently reported a new bug, of course. And what our QA team now is doing is they just mention our agent in the cloud, right? So then it sort of spins up somewhere in the cloud. It tries to, it reads the screenshot, it reads the text, searches our Jira to see if there are any similar issues, similar bugs. And if there are, of course, it can reference them. If not, then it does root cause analysis. So it goes through the repository and then proposes a fix, right? And then, of course, following that, QA engineer or whoever else can just ask the agent to implement it and then push to production. So essentially, QA engineers are going beyond just manual testers. But of course, AI can also help with that as well, right? So again, in the past year, you could still ask AI to, let's say, go to the website, and it could do it through, let's say, Playwright, right? It could write Playwright tests, it was able to write scripts and so on. However, this year, or rather late last year, agents started to get access to browser, to computer, and here's a quick demonstration of what it can do now. Let me switch here, and I will zoom in a bit. And I can ask the agent now to, let's say, in this case, go to this website, which you might know, and check that all buttons in the header work correctly and provide evidence, right? So let me just run this. And the agent now can access the browser, of course, not just through scripts. It can actually open the browser, right, in the application, and it's live. I'm not doing anything, right? It can. Sometimes it can be a bit slow, but it will start clicking through the buttons. Let me zoom in, make this window a bit bigger. Right. So at some point it should start switching to the different pages. Let's wait for that for a few seconds. Okay. Okay, fine. Yeah. So basically, it is now able to just click through, and in this case, it will just verify that everything is working. But of course, you can also use the same functionality to ask the agent to essentially reproduce the bug, then prepare the plan, create a fix, and everything is done for you. So it can also, of course, create screenshots, right? So here I have a previous run where it took a screenshot, for example, from the website as an evidence. So now you, as a QA engineer or designer or software engineer, you are essentially not limited by just your role, right? So as QA engineer, you're not limited to just, let's say, manual QA, and you can automate a lot of manual QA without even knowing Playwright, for example. But you can go beyond just that. Like as an example, in the previous example, with our QA team or with our designer, they were just able to implement things from scratch on their own without knowing anything about the coding and so on. Go back to the slides. Right, and this a lot sort of resembles how we, as developers, work, right? So if you heard about spec-driven development, right? It is essentially what our QA and the bot has been on this slide. They first did the requirements, right? They did the root cause analysis. So they got requirements, create a PRD, prepare technical spec, right? So they did the root cause analysis, propose a fix, and then last step is to implement it with AI. And then, of course, another agent can review it, another agent can verify that it's working, and so on. Now, all of that essentially just sort of breaks the barriers between the different roles. It sort of merges them. Because now QA or designer, or again, whoever, a backend engineer, can do much more with AI. They are not limited by their own skills because they can offload a lot of work to AI. So let's say I'm, as let's say, DevOps engineer. I don't really know much about front-end development. I mean, I can read the TypeScript code, but I might code my own website through AI, and yeah, it's been quite a nice journey. And of course, this kind of begs the question, which was already also brought up by the previous speakers as well, right, about the future, right? Whether AI will replace us, whether AI will replace QA engineers, and will there even be a role of QA engineer or backend engineer, and so on. And probably heard a lot of talks about AI replacing, not AI replacing you, but people with AI replacing you. And I think it's a nice allusion to that phrase, right? So definitely there is some truth to AI replacing some of the roles. But at the same time, again, through our experience, for example, with the QA team, it is hard to steal completely wipe code anything without understanding. And this is a good example here. Probably seen a lot of examples like this, right? So people without understanding what's going on, they do tend to miss some things, miss some critical things. And sorry, you still as the developer, as QA, if you have deep understanding of the technical side of things, you can benefit much more from wipe code. And I like to also compare this sort of future of AI, software developer, with self-driving cars, right? So if you're not familiar, self-driving cars have several levels of autonomy, ranging from level 0 to level 5, and this full A is supposed to be level 5, but ChatGPT decided to call it full A. And at level 5, we, as drivers, we essentially are no longer needed, right? We don't drive the car. At level 5, the car drives itself. And this kind of removes some of the jobs, right? So let's say taxi driver. Taxi drivers will not be needed anymore because the car drives itself, and we are just the passengers. But at the same time, it will also create a lot of more opportunities. It also commoditizes driving in the sense that we as passengers, we no longer need to spend time on driving. We can focus on different things while we are getting from point A from point B. And the same is true with AI, right? So we, as developers, as QA engineers, as whatever your role is, we are able to focus on much more creative stuff and much more high-level stuff because we can offload different things to AI. We can offload some mundane things to AI. And again, we are no longer linked by a specific role, right? We can go beyond just, let's say, QA roles in our everyday life. With that, I think we are almost on time. So I have a few QR codes here on the right. If you want to try our product, you can feel free to try it for free. On the left side is my QR code to my socials. Now, I will be here on the conference for the rest of the day. If you have any questions, feel free to find me. I will be somewhere in that corner most of the time. And yeah, thank you all for your attention. And I know if we have 2 minutes for the questions, if you can take 1 or 2, if there are any, feel free to ask. If not, feel free to find me there in the corner. Right. Okay.